If you go back 300 years, the things that we take for granted today would be burned at the stake for. Sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
The wake-up call that led to starting Amazon.com was finding that web usage in the spring of 1994 was growing at 2,300% a year. And things just do not grow that fast.
I had all the disadvantages necessary for success. I think if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So
when you want to build something great, it's not easy to do. And when you're doing something that's not easy to do, you're not always enjoying it.
The opportunities are there, but you got to reach out and pick them up. I was lucky. I seized the day.
But the luck also comes from so many failures. If I told you all the dumb things that I did. And the successes, they often are chance. I mentioned the Google Brain work, but they were just off in the corner. It's like, okay, fine, just, do your thing.
I don't even think it's important that every person go to college at all. It's really who you associate with. You want to associate with people that are nothing there.
You have to suffer. You have to struggle. You have to endeavor. You have to do those hard things and work through it in order to really appreciate what you've done. And there are no such thing that are great that was easy to do.
When I decided to do this, I first talked to my wife, and this was a hard decision, but it was a very clear way for me to think about making that kind of life decision. I worked at a quantitative hedge fund, and I was looking for the right framework in which to make that kind of important decision. And the right framework I found is a regret minimization framework. And that's just a nerdy way of saying that you want to project yourself to age 80 and then think back over your life. And if you're 80, you want to minimize the number of regrets you have throughout that period of time. I think this is something a lot of people do, maybe subconsciously. Very few people probably name it regret minimization framework because most people are healthier than that.
I also had sort of a slight existential crisis. So I was trying to figure out, what does it all mean? Like, what's the purpose of things? And I came to the conclusion that if we can advance the knowledge of the world, if we can do things that expand the scope and scale of consciousness, then we're better able to ask the right questions and become more enlightened. And that's really the only way forward. So I studied physics and business because I figured in order to do a lot of these things, you need to know how the universe works, and you need to know how the economy works. And you also need to be able to bring a lot of people together to work with you to create something, because it's very difficult to do something as an individual if it's significant technology. So I originally came out to California to try to figure out how to improve the energy density of electric vehicles, basically to try to figure out if there was an advanced capacitor that could serve as an alternative to batteries. But that's also when the internet started to happen. And I thought, well, I can either pursue this technology where success may not be one of the possible outcomes, which is always tricky, or participate in the internet and be part of it.
Back when I was in college, our country had just gone to war in Iraq. And the mood on our campus was disbelief. A lot of people felt like we were acting without hearing a lot of important perspectives. And the toll on soldiers and their families and our national psyche was severe, yet most of us felt like we were powerless to do anything about it. And I remember feeling that if more people had a voice to share their experiences, then maybe it could have gone differently. And those early years shaped my belief that giving more people a voice gives power to the powerless, and it pushes society to get better over time.
Now, your journey here is a testament of your character, determination, willingness to make sacrifices for your dreams. And you should be proud. The ability to make sacrifices, endure pain and suffering. You will need these qualities in life.
I don't know what got me to drop out of business school and come to Microsoft. My parents thought I was a whack job. Neither one of them graduated college, and they thought this was really a wild idea. I was lucky. I seized the day.
I have to admit that I don't love giving advice, especially to other people's children. And so my advice today will largely be disguised in some stories and some life experiences that I've enjoyed.
The wake-up call that led to starting Amazon.com was finding that web usage in the spring of 1994 was growing at 2,300% a year. I mean, it's a very, very unusual growth rate. And so the question was, what kind of business plan would make sense in the context of that growth? And you could tell anecdotally, even though there wasn't good research on this at the time, that the baseline of web usage wasn't trivial. And so something with a non-trivial baseline growing at 2,300% a year, clearly going to be everywhere tomorrow. And I went through a whole bunch of different things, made a list of 20 different products, looking for the first best product to sell online. Came up with books for a bunch of reasons, but primarily because books are very unusual in one respect, and that is that there are more of them than there are products of any other category. So there are literally millions of different books in print at any given time, and computers are good at organizing such large selections of products, and you could build something online that literally couldn't be built any other way. You couldn't have a physical world bookstore or a paper catalog with millions of different books. So that's what led to books.
So when I was young, I didn't really know what I was going to do when I got older. People kept asking me, but then eventually I thought that the idea of inventing things would be really cool. The reason I thought that was because I read a quote from Arthur C. Clarke, which said that a sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And that's really true. If you go back, say, 300 years, the things that we take for granted today would be, you'd be burned at the stake for. Being able to fly, that's crazy. Being able to see over long distances, being able to communicate, having effectively, with the internet, a group mind of sorts, and having access to all the world's information instantly from almost anywhere on the earth. This is stuff that really would be magic, or would be considered magic in times past. In fact, I think it actually goes beyond that, because there are many things that we take for granted today that weren't even imagined in times past. They weren't even in the realm of magic. So it actually goes beyond that. So I thought, well, if I can do some of those things, basically if I can advance technology, then that's like magic, and that would be really cool.
Now, back then, I was just building an early version of Facebook for my community, but I got a chance to see my values and beliefs play out at a smaller scale. And when students got to express who they were and what mattered to them, they started more student groups, they organized more businesses, and they even challenged some established ways of doing things around campus. And it taught me the lesson that while a lot of the world often focuses on the big events and institutions, the bigger story is that most progress in our lives actually comes from individuals having more of a voice. So since then, I've focused on building services that do two things: give people a voice and bring people together. And these two simple ideas of voice and inclusion go hand in hand. And we've seen this throughout history, even if it doesn't always seem that way today. More people being able to share their experiences and perspectives has always been necessary to build a more inclusive society. And it is our commitment to each other that we hold each other's right to express ourselves and be heard above our own desire to always get our way in every debate. That's how we make progress together. But this view is increasingly being challenged. Now, some people believe that giving more people a voice is driving division rather than bringing people together. More people across the spectrum believe that achieving the political outcomes that they think matter is more important than every person having a voice and being heard. And I think that that's dangerous. So today, I want to talk about why.
I think if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So I've always been very ambitious. I've always been very curious. Moved to Silicon Valley right after I dropped out of college, and got a job as a computer programmer. I learned how to program when I was in college. My original goal when I started Oracle was to build a company of 50 people I enjoyed going to work with every day, and people that I respected and enjoyed working with every day. It got to be a little bigger than that. We have 150,000 people inside the company now. When you're raised on the south side of Chicago, you probably want to move someplace nicer.
Well, life advice is, the most important thing, aside from the things I've talked about already, is really who you associate with. You want to associate with people that are better than you. I mean, basically, you'll go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and you want to have the right heroes. You want people, if you want to emulate somebody, you better pick very carefully who you want to emulate. And I don't even think it's important that every person go to college at all. I wouldn't worry. Some people are going to get a lot out of advanced education, and some people are going to get very little. And we have all kinds of jobs at 70 or so thousand a year, 80,000 a year, that college training is not of use. And I actually was not keen on going to college myself. Yeah, my dad kind of jollied me into it. He could get me to do anything. But if they'd had an SAT test in those days, he would have taken the test for me. But I knew I could have a good time, and I liked investing, and didn't really feel I could read the books.
I want to give you 3 principles to think about as you look at the opportunities that you have to make a difference. And it can be a difference in 1 or 2 people's lives, 100 people's lives, a difference in the world, a difference in arts or letters or science or business. I'll give you 3 things to think about. First, seize the day. The opportunities are there, but you got to reach out and pick them up. You've got to grab at them. Don't be afraid to make a mistake, because you know what you can do if you grab the wrong one? Drop it and pick up another one. It's okay. Seize the day. I think back of all of the luck, but also the times that were in front of me. People, Bill, Paul, they had the wisdom to seize the day when that opportunity presented itself.
At 7th grade, age 12, I start at Lakeside School for all 6 years of high school before I head off to Harvard. Everything, the time I was born, the kind of mental approach I have where I can dive into things, even though that is sometimes confusing to people, and I wasn't a natural at certain social things. Through my friendship with Kent and Paul and all this computer work, it was kind of obvious to me that we could do a software company, not just a company with a software product like most of our competitors, but a company that would do every kind of software, and that we would hire better and have better tools and just move faster than anybody else for this magic ingredient. Even when this book ends and Microsoft is moving to Seattle with 18 people, we think we're on to something that nobody else sees, which is that with the exponential improvement of the microprocessor, computing will be essentially free, and that the ways that you'll use computing will be extremely broad. And so we said a computer in every home and a computer on every desk, and people thought that was a bit crazy. Childhood prediction that Paul and I made in starting Microsoft, that digital stuff and software would be a primary change agent in terms of how life changed and driving lots and lots of innovation, that's been borne out. And so you can view what's going on today with AI as simply a continuation of what starts with the microprocessor, the PC, the mobile phone, the internet, and how all that, now AI does take it to a new level. Instead of thinking that it's computing is free, as we improve these systems and make them far more reliable, you'll actually be able to think of intelligence as being free. And, that's even more radical in terms of how it changes things.
I encouraged the graduates to engage with AI, the most consequential technology of our time. And I'll speak a little bit more about that later, but all of you know about AI. It's hard not to be immersed in it and surrounded by it, and a great deal of discussion about it. And of course, I hope that all of you are using it and playing with it. Some magical, some disappointing, and some surprising. But you have to enjoy it, you have to engage it. And these are extraordinary things that are happening that you should have an intuitive understanding for, because it's going to matter to you, it's going to matter to the industry, and hopefully you take advantage of the opportunity ahead of you.
So the thing is, when you want to build something great, it's not easy to do. And when you're doing something that's not easy to do, you're not always enjoying it. I don't love every day of my job. I don't think every day brings me joy, nor does joy have to be the definition of a good day. And every day I'm not happy. Every year I'm not happy about the company. But I love the company every single second. And so I think that what people misunderstand is somehow the best jobs are the one that brings you happiness all the time. I don't think that that's right. By definition, I would say, therefore, I wish upon you greatness, which by my way of saying it, I wish upon plain suffering.
But the luck also comes from taking many shots, so many failures. If I told you all the dumb things that I did, we'd have to have a much longer session. And the successes, they often are chance. I mean, I mentioned the Google Brain work that they were just off in the corner. It's like, okay, fine, just, do your thing. Really started with this glucose sensing contact lens project. And that was another one where I said, put a computer in a contact lens. And I was like, you know what, that sounds crazy, but you go do your crazy thing. You can only have a couple people work on it. I'm not going to give you a lot of resources, but and yet here they are a few years later, and they're, running, they're doing serious studies now. They have a big partnership with Novartis and Alcon, and they are, hopefully going to bring those to market. There's like no big deal. Just give it a shot. And I think that mentality permeates Silicon Valley, and I think that's one of the strengths. There's really not much, it's not viewed so negatively to try something, even if it doesn't work out.
For example, communication skills. I tell the students that come that they're going to graduate schools and business, and they're learning all these complicated formulas and all that. If they just learn to communicate better, both in writing and in person, they increase their value at least 50%.
And no matter what line of work you pursue later on, maybe your passion is science or education, or the arts or education, or medicine or healthcare, or business, there is not a single issue that isn't affected by political debates. And there's not a single issue that isn't threatened by the breakdown in our civil discourse. So when government tries to gag scientists and censors our conclusions, watch out and speak up. All of you can help do that, no matter what your politics are. Even if you hate politics, and there's certainly plenty of good reasons to hate politics these days, you will have to engage in political dialogue, if only to survive Thanksgiving dinner with your crazy uncle. And you will have to judge the arguments made by candidates if you are going to vote intelligently. The question I hope you will ask yourself, on what basis will you make those judgments? Fortunately, a recent study found that the smartest and most knowledgeable voters can actually be the worst judges. And the reason is they are most likely to make judgments based on which party is making the argument rather than on the argument itself. Too many politicians aren't interested in hard science. They're only interested in political science and winning the next election. So they ignore the data. They try to cut funding for climate research because they know it will undermine their political argument. Sometimes they even try to block public employees from uttering the words climate change. You can't make this stuff up. You just have to wonder, what are they trying to hide? And the only conclusion I've drawn is that they're either hiding their own ignorance or their own bad faith.
I can hardly imagine anyone more prepared for the future than you. You dedicated yourself, you worked hard, you earned a world-class education from one of the most prestigious schools in the world. And as you commence into the next stage, take my learnings and hopefully they'll help you along the way. I hope you believe in something unconventional, something unexplored.
I think young people, in some ways, their life is much easier than, sort of my life might have been. But there's also a global stage that makes it hard, actually, because when I was in school and I was on the math team or whatever, I was just compared to other kids in the school. And I find younger folks today their measures of themselves are always, especially, the ambitious ones, are on this global stage. It said like, well, I have to be, number one in the world at this or that. And I'm like, that's a really tall order. And I think it can be discouraging in a way because if, those folks say, well, I'm number 1,000 in the world at this game, which, in my world would have been an enormous achievement because that means like you were definitely the best in like your city and your state and whatnot. But it's hard. And I think, there's a little bit of discouragement. So, I would encourage young folks to, take chances and pursue their dreams. I think you should have fun and not be so weighed down by the weight of expectations that I think sort of this global network, unfortunately, one of the downsides, I think it creates that way.
I really believe that people need to have more than one thing in their life. I feel fortunate. I have a life partner. I have kids. I have a family. And you need to seize those opportunities in addition to the ones that you will find in front of you absolutely professionally.
Over the next generation, will lead a new wave of innovation. Which problems will you decide to solve? If your world is wide, you can create the future we all want. If your world is narrow, you may create the future the pessimists fear. I started learning in Soweto
that if we're going to make our optimism matter to everyone and empower people everywhere, we have to see the lives of those most in need. If we have optimism without empathy, then it doesn't matter how much we master the secrets of science. We're not really solving problems, we're just working on puzzles. I think most of you have a broader worldview than I had at your age. You can do better at this than I did. If you put your hearts and minds to it, you can surprise the pessimists. We're eager to see it.
And my generation will be able to say, as we pass the leadership torch to yours, the same words that Washington spoke with his last breath. 'Tis well. So tonight, have one last drink, maybe a tease, dance to your own beat, and tomorrow get to work. The world needs you more than ever.
The future depends on all of us. And whether you like Facebook or not, I think we need to recognize what is at stake and come together to stand for voice and free expression at this critical moment. I believe in giving people a voice because at the end of the day, I believe in people. And as long as enough of us keep fighting for this, I believe that more people's voices will eventually help us work through these issues together and write a new chapter in our history where from all of our individual voices and perspectives, we can bring the world closer together. Thank you.